Let's talk about the movie King Solomon's Mines. Came out in 1985, starring Richard Chamberlain, and at his side there is Sharon Stone. Now, I found this old article from 1985 in Zimbabwe, a remake of Solomon's Mines. And this is largely going to be centered on the state of Israel and Sharon Stone's relationship with a very prominent figure in Israel from about 2006 on, and how that relates and connects to the Epstein files. The movie is being made by a predominantly Israeli crew, whose presence in Zimbabwe at the time seems to conflict with government rhetoric that, on radio and television, calls Israel Zionist and Yasser Arafat comrade. Canon Pictures, although based in the United States, is owned by Israeli interests. Moreover, the local Palestine Liberation Organization office has protested vehemently to the authorities, claiming that the 40 or so Israelis on the set are security agents or soldiers, a charge denied by the movie makers, who explain that many people in Israel have undergone military training. Now, again, for some more context at the bottom, at the time of the filming of King Solomon's Mines, the Zimbabwean government officially supported the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and frequently used Zionist as a pejorative term. The PLO argued that allowing an Israeli-backed production, Canon Films, to film in the country directly conflicted with Zimbabwe's stated foreign policy. And if PLO sounds familiar, if you've listened to some of my content in the last couple weeks, I did a series of connections and how the Palestine Liberation Organization, for a long period of time, as, for lack of a better word, a hub, was at 115 East 65th Street in New York. And that from the year 2000 to 2016, right across the street at 116 East 65th Street was Ghislaine Maxwell's primary residence. Now, part of the protest against this was the negative depiction of Arabs. The Arab League joined the protest because the film's only Arab characters were depicted as slave traders. They argued this reinforced harmful, out-of-date stereotypes. The Zimbabwean government ultimately allowed filming to continue, defending the decision by noting the economic benefits. The fact that the company was technically American-based and that the Israeli crew members had flown in from London rather than directly from Israel. But I want to talk more about Canon Films for the rest of this specific video, because this is going to be several parts. And it's not going to be just about Sharon Stone. It's going to be about several other figures that are all going to tie in one way or another to the state of Israel and the vortex that is Jeffrey Epstein. Canon Films was largely involved in the ascension of figures like Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Sylvester Stallone. Movies like Delta Force. I mean, Gen Xers know all about Bloodsport, Kickboxer, and Cyborg. I guarantee it. Many of you look to those movies as iconic when you were younger. Cobra, Over the Top, Meet Me Halfway. I mean, the ending to that movie, Kenny Loggins, these were some of the greatest movies of our childhood. They were involved in movies like Masters of the Universe, Life Force, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I implore you to go look at how many dozens of movies Canon Films was involved with. Now, Sharon Stone appeared in 2 feature films produced by Canon, King Solomon's Mines and Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold, which, again, these were filmed back-to-back. Additionally, she is featured in the 2014 documentary Electric Boogaloo, the wild, untold story of Canon Films, which uses archival footage of her from these 2 movies. And one of the producers of Electric Boogaloo is Brett Ratner, who just recently, under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, came out pictures of him cuddling with really young girls, redacted faces, with Jeffrey Epstein, who also directed the Rush Hour franchise with Chris Tucker, who's all over the files. I did a video about that, talking about how he was loving to meet up with Jeffrey Epstein. So these connections matter. The two men behind the legendary Canon films were cousins, Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus. While famous for the 1980s American action schlock, their careers were deeply intertwined with Israel's historical and political landscape. Menahem Golan, born Menachem Globus, before moving to Hollywood, Golan was a pilot for the fledgling Israeli Air Force during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, where he changed his surname to Golan to sound more Hebrew. He is often cited as the father of the Israeli film industry. The Entebbe Raid. Their breakout international success was the 1977 film Operation Thunderbolt, which dramatized the real-life Israeli military rescue at Entebbe Airport. The film featured Yitzhak Rabin, who was prime minister during the actual raid, appearing as himself in news footage, and future Prime Minister Shimon Peres. Now, I need you to remember that name. That is going to come up in future parts of this series, okay? Then he was Minister of Defense, was a close associate of the filmmakers. National recognition. Golan eventually received the Israel Prize in Cinema in 1999, the country's highest cultural honor, for his contributions to the nation's arts. In a broader context of Israeli Hollywood moguls, they are often mentioned alongside a man named Arnon Milchan, another prominent producer who simultaneously worked as an Israeli intelligence operative and arms dealer. Now I'm going to wrap part one up with this article below. I want you to notice below that Arnon Milchan is the Hollywood mogul that was behind films like Fight Club. All of these things connect. I've talked about Fight Club many times with regards to the audio interview with Sasha Riley and how the bare knuckle fights he witnessed when he was being trafficked. I've talked about Fight Club. Now let's go further into this. And who's this on the front of this article? That looks like Leonardo DiCaprio to me. Arnon Milchan was also an Israeli spy involved in smuggling equipment for the development of nuclear weapons. According to the book Confidential, The Life of Secret Agent turned Hollywood tycoon Arnon Milchan, Arnon was recruited into Israeli intelligence in his 20s and put to work by LACM, the Economic Espionage Division. Take a second to read the rest. The export of krytrons was strictly regulated precisely because of their use in nuclear weapons, and efforts by the Israeli government to import them legally had failed. So the Ministry of Defense provided Heli with the money to buy them via Milco, who got them from EG&G, a U.S. defense contractor. This went on happily for several years until it was interrupted by a potentially even more suspicious event. Based on the heavily redacted FBI file details, in January of 1983, there was a break-in at Milco's offices in Huntington Beach, and someone, likely Smith, filed a report with the FBI. Presumably, the burglars stole some of the krytrons because when the Bureau interviewed the person who filed the report, he mentioned tubes, which Customs quickly figured out were krytrons. And because Smith wouldn't roll over for the FBI, they indicted him for exporting arms illegally and for making false statements. Despite being a consultant to the Air Force and to NATO, Smith then fled the country, hiding out in Spain until 2001. He accidentally revealed himself when he started claiming Social Security benefits, and Interpol swooped in, arrested him, and extradited him back to the U.S. Pause and read. You can read the rest of this. I'm going to read you the last part. Meanwhile, back in California, Milchan got Smith into Hollywood parties where he was introduced to celebrities. It's just one big web. And in part two, we're going to explore just how deep this web ties in to the state of Israel. Peace out. Much love.